Good evening. Thank you. Welcome. My name is Martin Whitaker. I'm the CEO of Just Capital. It's my great pleasure to welcome each and every one of you here tonight. I know this is a really busy time of year, and we're very grateful for your presence here to support us for the launch of the 2018 Just Capital America's Most Just Companies. Yes, let's do it. We have a great program in classic Just Capital style. We're going to cram far too much work into a ludicrously short amount of time, but we will get it done, have you out of here on time, and hopefully with a smile on your face as well. It has been a phenomenal year for Just. We launched with our partners at Goldman Sachs the single largest sustainable ETF in history. Back in June, rang the opening bell of the New York Stock Exchange. We have hundreds of companies, over 300 companies now on our research platform, giving us thousands and thousands of data points. We have reached millions of ordinary Americans through our social media and our marketing work. We've had tremendous amount of success. I would say what's most gratifying, quite honestly, is the changes that we begin to see in the companies that we're ranking, and being able to track that, and to know that the mission we're on is beginning to take root and have an impact. And we'll see that tonight to celebrate the Just 100 companies. So it's been a great year, and I want to thank the Just Capital team. If you could just make yourself known. Would you put your hand up on the Just team? And if you've ever been on the Just team, because I know we got some alumni here as well. Can I get a round of applause, please? It's great work. I want to thank the board. We have board members here tonight. You guys sit through some intense board meetings, I know. But it's really a great honor and great pleasure to work with you. I want to thank each and every one of our donors, large and small. Their names are on the screens at the side you can see here. I won't go through them, but obviously, your support is crucial to our future. I do want to thank, he's not going to like this, but I'm going to thank Paul and Sonia and the Jones Family Office. I got to tell you, working with Paul, it's just, this guy's the beating heart of our organization. His vision, I will say his courage in putting himself out there. I don't know if you've seen this CNBC interview this morning, but you got to have courage of your convictions to put himself out there the way he does. So congratulations, and Paul, it's our honor to work with you. Can I get a round of applause for Paul as well? I do have a special award for another company that supported us all along the way with a huge amount of pro bono work, but more importantly, their counseling, their support, and that's Sullivan and Cromwell. These guys are partners all the way through, right from day one, and we actually have an award here. Jib, would you mind coming up and accepting this? For you, sir. Great, thank you. So tonight is really about celebrating the true heroes, which are the Just 100 companies, and the decisions that they make each and every day to make the world a little more just. As we all know, our mission is to build a more just marketplace in America, right? A market that works for more people, a market where just is defined not by us, not by Deepak, not by Paul, but by the American people themselves. And that is our story. We're here to celebrate, in particular, America's most just company, Microsoft. I know Bill and Satya were very happy, very proud. And Peggy, you're on the panel tonight, and congratulations to you. But I do want to thank each and every one of our Just 100 companies here tonight. If you wouldn't mind just making yourselves known, and a round of applause, please, for all the companies in the room tonight. Our job really is to tell your story. How are you doing on the things that the public, your stakeholders, really care about. And it's a great story. You know, the Just 100 pay their people more money. They have more women on their boards. They support communities. They're more generous. They have a lower environmental impact. And they have a return on equity that's 7% higher than the others. Our Just Index, launched 2 years ago, live trading has outperformed its benchmark by almost 400 basis points. I can tell you our own work on looking at the top 20% of companies versus the bottom 20% of companies. That spread over 2 years is 20%. So this idea that you've got to give something up to be just, it's just a myth. So our job, we want to tell that story. Being just is great for business, it's great for shareholders, and we want to make heroes out of the companies and of American branded capitalism. So that's the win-win-win that we're looking for. So without further ado, we want to get straight into the program. I'm going to invite Vonnie Quinn from Bloomberg Markets, Paul Jones, and Julian Robertson. Julian? And we're going to have a fireside chat. And Vonnie, you're going to do the intros?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, legendary investors, Julian Robertson and Paul Tudor Jones, thank you so much for allowing me to participate. You want to sit here?
Yeah.
All right.
What do you think?
Giving orders already. That's what makes them.
Okay.
All right. Well, I guess you both are interviewing me now.
Terrific.
Okay. Well, I want to start with philanthropy because obviously that's one of the reasons we're here, and you started this effort back in 2012. So it's 6 years on the go. But of course, you both are phenomenally known for all of your philanthropic efforts, from Robin Hood to Everglades to everything that you do. How has philanthropy evolved for you as a theme?
Well, it was so wonderful professionally following in Julian's footsteps, because he ran one of the largest hedge funds in the whole world. So I learned really early about scale, and philanthropy is the same way. You're always trying to think about ways that you can have the biggest positive impact that you can have on folks. And when Deepak originally called about this idea of just capital, it struck a resonant chord because the private sector's $18 trillion. The public sector's $4 trillion. Private philanthropy is barely $400 billion. So the private sector is 40 times the size of private philanthropy. So you've got the Tiger Foundation that does tremendous work. It's just never going to compete. If we can just move the way people operate at work 1%, that's $150 billion, just moving it towards a more just world. And it can solve a lot of the huge social, structural issues that we have today.
Julian, do you agree that this is a good way of making the world, and particularly America, because we're seeing something very different play out in Europe, a more just capitalist society?
There's no question about that. I think that that people are becoming much more philanthropic, and they love it, and they will continue to love it because it's good work. And what these guys have done, I think, is just fantastic. I'm shocked at the results y'all have gotten so far. I admired you tremendously for taking on the challenge, but it never occurred to me you'd get these kind of results so quickly.
And the ETF, wow, there's a lot of confidence. The ETF that is based on this already has 200 million and counting, and obviously a lot of scale available. So let's talk a little bit about the markets for a moment. You're on the record now as saying no Federal Reserve rate hikes next year. You think there's commodities deflation out there. How do you then position for that kind of environment now?
Well, I think the markets are highly volatile. I think they're going to, I can easily see a situation in 2019 where all the deleveraging that we've experienced in the last month and a half, really in the last 4 or 5 months, all that deleveraging gets reinvested back in the market. You know, it's funny because, and Julian ran one of the greatest hedge funds of all time, we're all, and so often in the long-short world, it's the relative game. So there'll be some point in 2019 when the market's up on the year and there'll be a beta squeeze, and all that deleveraging that we've seen is going to go back in the market. 2007 is a great example. The last hike was in 2006. In 2007, the economy was falling apart, but the stock market did great for all the way until October. So can we have a scenario like that again? I think it's really possible.
Are you putting macro trades on, or are you keeping some powder dry? What are you doing to prepare for that scenario?
It's, again, I think we're going to be in big trading ranges where just having and holding static positions, this might be a better time to be a trader than to just hold, because I don't know if we're going to have a huge amount of trends. It could just be an enormously volatile period with a lot of back and forth.
Julian, does this period remind you of any period in the past?
I can't say that it's that it really does, but I think we have a strange dichotomy here with so much such strong opinions on all sides, and I wonder if that will all allow us to have an orderly transition.
Are you suggesting there might be some kind of disorderly effect on the markets? And where might that be if it does actually
Well,
happen?
I've noticed a few little strange things going on.
Oh, do elaborate, Julian, please. Where have you noticed? Elaborate on that.
No. That's enough.
Well, let me ask you this.
That's
Do
enough.
you agree?
Look, I'm so proud of him doing this thing. That's what we ought to be talking about tonight.
Yeah, and we will. But-
And that's the big thing.
Final question then on the current environment. Do you agree with Paul that there won't be any Federal Reserve rate hikes next year?
I wouldn't. I would bet there would be, but I'm not that violent on it.
Okay, and opportunities-wise, are you licking your chops about anything that you see?
Not really.
Okay. Exactly, Just Capital. So let's get back to Just Capital and the idea that Microsoft was actually the top performer when it came to public metrics.
That
Now,
happens to be our largest holding, by the way. I was amazed over that.
will you be piling in more if there is a 10% drop like Paul suggests next year?
I think I think it's a great stock to pile in.
You do. And on that note, final question on markets. Do you see a rotation to value happening anytime soon?
Well, I think all of us think we're in value stocks. My choice of value might be different from Paul's or yours. That's the difference.
Okay. Paul, Microsoft being the top performer, it's not always clear that shareholders' interests and, say, employees' interests are aligned. What makes it work for Just?
Well, remember, all Just is a mouthpiece for the American public, right? That's all it is what we're doing is we've asked the American public, we poll every year, we take the data in, we combine and evaluate it, and then we rank. So all we're doing is just a mouthpiece for the American public. They're the ones that told us when it comes to corporate justness that the most important metric is pay, 23%. They're the ones that told us the next most important metric is the customer experience at 18%, and then the next one is products at 15%. And again, all we're doing is playing catch. What's so fascinating is that if you take those three metrics, right, pay, customers, and products, it's about 60%. You can all of a sudden see why that makes a good business. Now, what blew my mind was those companies, like in the Just 100, on average, have an ROE that's somewhere between 5 and 7%, depending upon the year, greater than those that aren't in the Just 100. And again, why is that? Well, the reason why is, and I go back to the old Peter Lynch, who used to go into the supermarkets on the weekend and he'd see a product and everyone was buying it, so he'd get along that stock. It's really simple. If I hire a motivated workforce, if I pay them well and treat them well, and I give a great customer experience, they're going to make good, socially beneficial products at a good price and of reasonable quality. That's a damn good business model. And so one thing I always hate is I hate reading. But this is so damn amazing. It's in our message talking points. The companies in the Just 100, of which Microsoft is one, the companies in the Just 100, compared to the rest, the other 900, here's what they do. They pay their median workers 26% more. They pay a living wage to 12% more of their workers. They're 9 times more likely to have conducted gender pay equity analyses, 69% versus 8%, to make sure that women get paid for doing the same job a man does. They're nearly 2 times more likely to offer flexible work hours. They're nearly 4 times more likely to have diversity targets. They recycle 8 times more waste. They employ 2.4 times as many U.S. workers as the other ones do. They pay 99% fewer fines on sales terms, 90% fewer environmental fines, 71% fewer worker safety fines, and they on average give 6 times as much to charity. I want to own that company. I want to own that. That's who I want to be. That's the company that I want to own. We're going to start this dadgum ETF next year, and it's going to kick the stew out of every other ETF there is. If I had to make just one forecast, this dadgum ETF one day is going to beat the hell out of the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. It will, and it makes sense because every year you're going to re-rank towards greatness.
And that word is in Investopedia, let me tell you. You can look it up after it's dadgum. What do you do to incentivize companies to get there? Because obviously the tech companies have figured it out. They've figured out how to keep their workers happy. Other companies...
But Microsoft really is doing a lot now. I mean, they've already helped out so much in Africa over there. Bill Gates has with malaria and all the diseases over there. But did you know that Microsoft actually has a plan of attack in case the weather gets totally out of hand and it looks like we're going to burn ourselves up? And they are preparing a plan of attack on that. And they've done what our government should be doing.
Well, and that's my next question. What are the incremental improvements to capitalism that U.S. companies can make? I know that you both are firm believers in capitalism, but you especially say there are certain things. To you, is capitalism perfect right now, or what needs to be done?
No, of course it can be improved, and it should be improved, but it's the best system around, and we've got to be sure we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater and all that. I mean, but there's no question companies are becoming better parents to their workers, and they're doing a better job of being managers.
And inequality is a big part of this, and I know that that's one of the reasons why these companies are scoring well, because you asked the American public what their metrics should be, and obviously pay inequality was one. And as we see in Europe, you know, things are not going so well there right now in places like France. Can improving that metric, give back to the companies? So, or is it like something like consumer confidence, where the consumer will say, yes, of course I'm going to spend, I want this, that, and the other, but then what they actually do is something different?
So we poll, that's a great question, and we polled 80% of Americans are willing to take a pay cut, 80%, to work for a Just company, to work for a company that Just 100 are willing to take a pay cut because it's that important to them. And it makes sense because you want to have purpose in what you're putting in 50 hours a week. You want to feel like I'm a difference maker and I'm a positive difference maker. So capitalism, why do we start this? Because the best system of economic governance is capitalism. But we've had 80% productivity gains in the last 40 years in this country. Workers have gotten 10% of that 80. It's not fair. There are other stakeholders in the world besides shareholders and management. There are workers, there's customers, there are local communities, there's the planet. And what this is hopefully going to be, a competition for goodness, so that the rest of that corporate ecosystem gets the benefit and the productivity gains that all companies are making. It can't just be a small group and of which I am, Julian is. It can't just be a small group of enriched shareholders. Just one last comment. The top two metrics that the American public says, it's workers and it's customers. Those are human beings, right? They're not profits. They're human beings. So we've got to put humanity back into the way that we manage our companies and put people first.
Has anybody, whether it's a board member or somebody in the C-suite, actually pushed back on that argument? Because it sounds obvious, right?
Listen, I think this is the three stages of truth. And we've spent the last 30 years on Wall Street, and the way that we've, as shareholders, of which I am too, so I'm guilty, we've spent the last 30 years maximize profits at all costs. We talk about it on Bloomberg, on CNBC. What are the earnings reports? Oh, you missed 2 cents, you're fired. And we've lost the humanity in what was the backbone of this country, which is business. And I think there's nothing that's black or white. It's shades of gray. We've probably gone too far, and we're just now starting to come the other way. And I think it's going to be ultimately great for us, and I think we'll have capitalism continuing as the basic bedrock of this country. Again, why am I nervous? There was a poll recently, 51% of millennials are opposed to capitalism. Oh my Lord, that scares the absolute hell out of me.
What would you say to those 50% of millennials, Julian?
I would try to convince them, and I would fail.
You would? You sure?
And no, but I think it is a thing we have to worry about. And I think it's wonderful that Microsoft may be going even maybe a little overboard on all this, but I don't think so.
So on that note, and we're being given the end.
What does that mean?
It means stop talking.
You've had that end sign up every time I open my mouth, and there's an end sign there.
He's one of the 50%
I love this guy. It allows me to just shut up right away.
Well, maybe I can help out here, because he's been a Trojan for doing this. Okay. But what is your biggest concern then for 2019? There's obviously concerns out there.
Well, there are a lot of concerns. There's no question about that. And frankly, my biggest concern is the ability of the executive branch of the government to get along with the rest of the country.
Would a change in leadership effectuate that? And if so, what kind of a change?
Well, I don't want to get into that.
We got to go.
I've gone too far.
She's trying to.
Give me that end sign again. Where is it when I needed it?
We're having so much fun. All right, Paul, since this is your baby and your event, I'll give you the final word. Your greatest hope and your greatest concern for next year.
My greatest hope is that Just Capital, the companies that are in the Just 100 will use our seal and it becomes ubiquitous like the Good Housekeeping seal. My greatest concern is that won't happen. Thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you all, and thank you,
Thank
Julian,
you.
so
Thank
much
you very
for
much.
such great sports.
Thanks.
Very good.
Tough acts to follow there. My name's Randall Lane. I'm the Chief Content Officer at Forbes. And I heard about they were talking about interest rates earlier, so I figured I'd talk about real estate, specifically the most valuable real estate Forbes has, which is the cover of Forbes. And I must say, I was very curious. This is hot off the presses. This is so hot. I did not see this issue until I got here today, and all my colleagues are saying the same thing. But Paul, somehow you got already, what is it? I think that's how you get 20% returns every year. But we're very proud to feature for the second year in a row the Just 100 on the cover of Forbes. The reason that we do this and the reason we're proud to be partners with Just Capital is because, as Julian and Paul so eloquently said, we are the champions of free enterprise. We very much believe that capitalism is the greatest system to distribute wealth ever created, but like any great business and any great business system, it needs to evolve, and we're proud to be part of an evolution to create a sustainable system so that everything that we enjoy and all the abundance that we all enjoy together continues. So that's why we're a part of this. I want to thank Just Capital and everything they do. I want to thank my colleagues at Forbes, Maggie McGrath, Janet Novak. They're here. If you want to read a great story, actually, Maggie's story, on how the Just 100 is self-regulating in the face of government, instead of waiting for government to regulate and doing the kind of things that government sometimes does that nobody really likes. They're taking the steps. A lot of the Just 100 is taking the steps to do the right thing without government having to tell them what to do. So that leading the charge there is the number one company, the number one just company in America. That's Microsoft. And so we're going to hear about that. We have Peggy Johnson, who's the EVP of Business Development. And interviewing her will be Michelle Miller, who's the only reason I get up early on Saturday mornings at CBS this morning. So thank you. Look forward to it.
Thank you. Come on, Peggy.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. So glad to be here.
Hello.
Peggy,
I'm glad too.
First off, congrats.
Thank you.
Congrats
Very
on
humbled.
being the most, that sounds so strange, the most just company. And
That's a great list, though. That's
yeah,
an
it's an
amazing
incredible
so
list, but you know what?
good
It's
job
nice
of
to
you.
be on top, isn't it?
Well, I'd like to see my boss. It's great. It's a great picture of him.
So here you are, you're head of business development.
Yes.
You're the person in charge of profitability. You're the person in charge of growth. You're the person that has to deliver. So in essence, all of that we talked about, that Vani and her fabulous cohorts talked about up here, how did you deliver?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think fundamentally we want to be the company that's invested in the success of our stakeholders. And the stakeholders are not just the investors. They're our customers, our partners, our employees, and even the local communities all around the world that we live in and work in. And really the core to that goes to our mission statement. So much so that success I just talked about is baked into our mission statement, which is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And it's interesting, it sounds like it's one of those mission statement things, but we have 130,000 people plus at the company. And everyone can repeat that, from our interns to all of the employees to our board of directors. So it's very deeply a part of us. We've really embraced it. And it's one of those things, when you think about business decisions, you can look through it with the lens of that mission statement, right? And if it ladders up to that mission statement, then we proceed. And so it's just something very core to us.
But so many of these issues like pay equity, career advancement, fair pay, gender equity, all of that, that's usually siloed into the HR department. So how do you keep it on the minds of those folks at the upper tier? I mean, how do you really ingrain it at that level when profitability is just so on the minds of everyone?
You know, I would say you're right about it has been siloed into HR, and you tend to think, oh, it's one of those issues. HR will take care of it.
Right.
That's their remit. Go off and handle. And we've really pivoted at Microsoft. In fact, you know, those issues are our everyday issues, and we keep them at the forefront. So even our senior leadership team, we get together once a week with Satya, and our senior leaders get together. And as often as there's business issues on there, there's issues from the other side as well, those HR issues, right? And so they're as critical to our success as, you know, one of the business issues, very critical. But you have to continue to be, you know, you have to be invested in our stakeholders' success. So for instance, you talked a little bit about paid leave. We have instituted paid parental leave at Microsoft, but earlier this year, we said, you know, that was a good thing for our employees. It's very clearly has an impact for our employees, but we asked all of our US-based vendors to also institute a 12-week paid parental leave. So because those employees are all laddering up and building the products that are going out the door at Microsoft, right? So they are as critical to our success as our own employees. And what we realized is we have the ability to have an impact, to have kind of, you know, a halo effect around what we do, what our policies are. Another area that we're very focused on is the whole idea about accessibility. And again, I think accessibility does get a little bit pigeonholed because people think, oh, that's, you know, that's great, that's for somebody else. I'm not limited or have a physical limitation, but that's the wrong way to think about it. I think if you really think about it, all of us at one time or another have had some sort of limitation. Maybe it's just temporal, but you know, maybe you've broken a leg or broken an arm, or maybe you're just holding a baby in one hand and groceries in the other, and you really want to get a message to your spouse. What about voice enabling products? So when you think about accessibility in the light of, you know, how everyone might use things, it really opens up your eyes. And our product teams have embraced it as they begin to build products that we think will be, you know, helpful to a certain group. It ends up, you know, being a good thing for everybody.
I'm curious, as I'm sure most of you are, you care to elaborate on that climate change apparatus
Oh,
we were talking
think what
about
Julian
earlier?
was talking about, though I could check with him, was something we call AI for Earth. Now, so AI is a tool, right, that we'll be able to use to reason over big, vast amounts of data and you know, surface new insights. But not everybody has access to AI tools. You know, big companies will be able to, but companies that are working on climate change and looking for, you know, pattern matching across weather data and things like that don't always have access to those tools. And so we've made the tools accessible to them. In fact, we just talked about putting it's about $115 million toward getting that kind of access to companies that work on that, companies in the healthcare space, NGOs who are trying to solve big problems like, you know, immigration, migration, and how to get identity to immigrants and things like that. So we want to say these tools aren't just for companies who have the means, but for people who are working on very hard problems, and hopefully they can, you know, surface some solutions with those tools.
Speaking of AI, there's also that thing called machine automation. There's machine learning. In the realm of, you know, employees out there, how do you find that healthy balance between moving forward with technology and making sure that you aren't risking, you know, the potential growth of, you know, workers down the line? Real people.
Yeah, real people.
Real people. Real
so
people.
I think, speaking of real people, I think if you always center it on humans and you say these tools are meant to augment humans' ability, not to replace humans' ability. And
Easier said than done in some
easier-
situations.
That's true, Michelle, and I agree with you, but you have to keep it front of mind. And we've actually been working on AI on our campus for about 25 years. Our researchers have been working on it for a long time. And so we've actually had our head around what this technology can eventually do. And so we've thought a lot about the ethical use of this technology. And you have to think of things like transparency. People have to understand what's going on with their data. You have to keep their data private. You know, you have to make sure there's not biases in the data. So there's a lot of things. It's not just build the technology, throw it out, and you know, hopefully people will build good things. You really have to think about where this technology is going to go. But I think if you keep humans at the center, you're going to win.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're at the top of your game. You're number one.
We're humble about that. We're going to keep our head down and keep working hard.
So 2018's over, boo, in what?
I know.
3 more
It's like
weeks.
Weeks.
What you focused on in 2019?
Oh.
How are you going to keep it up there?
I think in this environment, we really want to be known as a trusted partner. And so we'll continue to work hard on that to to earn the respect of our customers and to ensure we keep their data private. And really continue to produce the tools that will make them more productive going forward.
All right.
So
Good luck with that.
thank you, Michelle.
I'm
Thank
staying,
you.
but you're going to stay
Oh, I'm
right
staying,
up here.
that's right.
She stays. She stays. But we're going to call Craig Buchholz, Chief Communications Officer for Procter & Gamble up.
Yeah.
We have Alicia Bowler-Davis, Executive Vice President of Global Manufacturing for GM, and Ardeen Williams, VP of Worldwide People Operations for Amazon.
Yay.
Congratulations, everybody. So, tell us, how have you been able to make it on the list?
Straight to me.
Straight to you,
All right,
boo.
great.
After that glass of wine, I'm seeing what you have.
Fair. How have we been able to make it on the list?
Right. I mean, and stay. I mean, you're
Yeah.
not just on the list.
Yeah. So I think this is actually where Just Capital gets it right, and we take a page out of that book, because I think a lot of this is about reflecting what America wants versus projecting into America what we think should be right. And so the index of everybody in this room actually reflects the companies that are listening to their consumers or their stakeholders and making specific choices that actually reflect that. This versus thought leadership and saying, we're going to project into this.
Right. So where does that start, though? I mean, when you think about it, and how much of a tipping scale on that ladder of hierarchy does it take?
I think it starts with actually understanding who your stakeholder is and what they want, right? So at P&G, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is being very connected to our consumer, deeply connected to our consumer.
I mean,
And-
do they bathe with you? I mean, they do everything.
So we go into their homes all the time. We'll spend hours in a consumer home watching them.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, with their permission, of course.
Okay, all right.
So, and we'll watch a man shave. We'll watch a woman or a caretaker pamper a baby, and understand exactly the mechanics of that. So, Peggy, to your point, voice activation, like immobility, might not be that you don't have a limb. It's like you, in that moment, can't actually, don't have the mechanic ability to do that, right? So it comes with deep insight, and then understanding based on that was our role in helping you achieve what you need out of your life.
Right, so P&G and GM are two, I don't want to call you old world companies.
We're 180.
but-
We've been around.
Hello, you've been around a while.
Exactly.
You're a little gray in the, what they say, long in the tooth?
Long in the tooth.
Long in the tooth. So how do you bring in that realm? I mean, it is said most of the people, or a lot of the folk in that top tier on the Just 100, they're Silicon Valley folks. They're new age. So how did you sort of lift and push over? I mean, you really had to sort of like run the hare's race.
I think we just did some soul searching and really looked back around our history and being around for over 100 years and what went well and what didn't go so well, and to be honest about it. So for us, we really focus on our employees, because everything we do starts with our employees. So if you have great products and great services, you have to have people committed to doing that. And then we focus on the relationship that we have with our customers. And I have to say, that wasn't always the case. We used to treat our customers very transactional, right? It would be buy a product and then they go and we just hope that they come back when they're back in the market again. And I'd say, 6 or 7 years ago, we really focused on our customer experience, and it started with listening to our employees and what they felt we valued, and then also listening to our customers, because our employees told us that, well, we're really not as customer focused as we should be. And that our customers told us the same thing. And so we really focused under Mary Barr's leadership around being this customer-centered organization. And we knew our employees have to be the ones that drive that, and they have to connect with that, they have to believe in it, and they have to create great products and experiences, and so that's how we did it.
But if I'm getting the timing right, that came around the same time as that little thing called the Great Recession,
Yeah.
right? So you had to connect at a time where you felt like because your customer base were the people you were paying back.
Exactly.
They were your chief investors,
Right.
not just in your product, but in your...
Exactly. And so that was, obviously, having gone through bankruptcy, that was one of the experiences where you never, ever want to go through that again. And part of repaying the people that believed in us was to really do the right things for our company and to do the right things so that we will be around for another 100 years. And for us, it started with our employees and focusing on our customers, and we're continuing to do that.
You've made news in the last month.
Yes, we have.
Yeah,
And we'll continue.
downsizing. Yeah, downsizing. Can you speak?
I'd say transformation. So we're under a transformation. Our customer preferences have changed. And so it would not be responsible for us to continue to build products that our customers are showing us are not relevant for us. So obviously people are impacted when you do that. And we spent a lot of time understanding the impact on our employees, on the families, on the communities, and then working on what can we do and how do we do this in a way that we can create opportunities for employees in other areas that are growing. And that's really what we have been focusing on. But we have to make those tough decisions, and it is very, very challenging to do, but it would be irresponsible not to make the adjustment.
So who's made a tough decision in this room this year? Nobody? Wait, hi. Ardeen. Amazon. The secret sauce of Amazon. And when you think of it, I want you to give me very specific examples of what you were most proud of in your justness this year.
So I think the secret sauce I don't think is very secret. I think that we are, and we aspire to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. I think one of the things I'm most proud of this year is the move to the $15 minimum wage. We had always said that we paid on average $15, and average is only important depending on where you sit on the side of the average. And any conversation, even with executives that starts with total compensation, is very difficult to communicate. And the thing that I really love about Amazon is one of our leadership principles is to be curious. And what that means is when people are critical, it means you need to lean forward and be curious about why they're critical and listen. And when we did, we said, you know what? Our critics are saying that we should pay more. Our employees are telling us that they want predictability. And we said, you know what? We have an opportunity to lead. And we have a large number of employees, and we said we have the opportunity by making that decision to influence the communities in which we hire people, the suppliers that work with us, and then to help start the conversation at the national level about raising the minimum wage. Now, it doesn't mean that $15 is the right wage. We're not in a position to say that. There are elected officials at the local level, the state level, at the federal level that are better positioned to have that dialogue, but $7.25 is too low.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's be honest here. Let's be really honest here. You have these situations where companies take really, key issues head on. They have been criticized as using, those stances as, branding exercises. But when you really think of it in terms of the marketing strategy, how do you ensure that you are walking the talk and not just, you know, you're trying to get out of a little trouble here, you're trying to maneuver out of a scenario there. I mean, how do you stay honest with who you are and who you want to be?
I think so. So we actually don't consider it to be a marketing strategy. So on November 8th, we actually held our biannual Investor Day.
Yeah, I'm not saying you.
No, but I mean, like, but I'm saying, but this
I'm
is
just
the
saying
answer.
we know there
No,
are companies out there.
But my point is, right? I think some people get it more right than others, and we can always do better. But we actually consider it part of our enterprise growth strategy, right? And so on November 8th, we sat in front of institutional investors. We talked about innovation. We talked about what we were doing to transform the supply chain. We talked about all the things that you would think institutional investors generally care about. And we talked about how we were going to deliver on our so-called citizenship strategy, which is all the things that we're talking about here. Because we don't consider it actually part of the marketing arm. We consider it how we're going to grow a 180-year-old, $65 billion company.
GM.
No, and I agree with that 100%. We look at it as a necessity. It's absolutely required. It's not something that we are using from a marketing perspective. Our employees and our customers keep us honest, right? And so part of we've spent a lot of time on our values and our behaviors, and knowing that we're going to have to transform and innovate in order to continue to be relevant. And so that's what we focus on. It's who we are. And so we haven't gone out, quite frankly, we haven't gone out trying to market it or talk about it. It's just how we have been really focused on behaving.
So the #1 ranking for Americans was how companies treat their workers. It's the most important issue. One, did it surprise you at all? And two, you know, you're highlighting your customers here as well as your workers. So rank that for me in terms of you being on the inside looking out.
It doesn't surprise me at all. Customers know companies by our workers. They're the people that you meet at the grocery store, that your kids are in school with. They're the fabric of the community, #1. And our environment right now, people make decisions, consumers make decisions based on how they perceive that company. And our employees are our customers. I mean, we have 630,000 employees, and though a large number of them also shop with us, and so there isn't really a line between customer and employee for us. So no, it's not surprising.
Are we seeing this sea change though? I'm looking at it from the millennial standpoint and what we were talking about earlier. Is there a sea change in how we, as a society, are raising the value of the worker? I guess is my question, Peggy.
Yeah,
you
no.
look like you're chomping at the bit
Yeah,
here.
because we definitely are seeing that, and I have 2 millennial kids in the workforce now, and it's interesting what's important to them, purpose, these things are resonating, and we have to be very visible with our set of principles at the company, share them. And you know, another thing I was thinking when Julian and Paul were talking, I'm involved with M12, which is our corporate venture fund, and those startup companies are as deeply involved in these same principles as, that was a little surprising for me, because so many startups, they're like, I'm building a product, I'm just going to build this product, I have my blinders on for everything else, and they're asking us, you know, we need to understand how to build an HR department. We want to build an HR department that has the same principles as you do. And so we're actually sharing some of our online tools with the startups. But it's interesting, there has been a change. Even I've only been with Microsoft for 4 years. In that period of time, I've seen that with that community. Quite a difference in their focus and what attracts them to a company.
Can I just build on that for a second?
Sure, yeah.
So I think this is interesting because I think what's happening right now, to your question, are we getting the time?
No, we're not ending. We are not ending.
I don't think society is actually building the value of the worker. I think the worker is building the value of the worker. And I think what we're seeing right now is a democratization of the workforce in a way that we've never seen it before. And if you think about like the Google walkout, which was a very interesting sort of moment in time and an inflection point in the power that an employee has in driving the value system of a company, we watched that with great interest. And the issue itself notwithstanding, we watched it from the notion of truly understanding and being in touch with and democratizing the workforce in a way that I think is somewhat new. And so it's the worker that's actually driving the value of the worker.
I think there's a very interesting piece, though, I have 3 millennials as well. I think there's also, when you look at just the voter turnout, regardless of which party turned out, that millennial population really drove a re-engagement in democracy. So I think there is a generational wave here that's giving voice.
Yep.
Just as Paul and Julian mentioned, more just companies are seeing that it can affect their profits in a positive way. Would you say the same is for diversity in the workforce, for women in their pay equity in terms of, let's just like bring everybody up to 100%. But what is that going to take? Do we have to wait another 50 years really before minorities and women have equal pay?
God, I hope not.
No.
I sure hope not. But I mean, the empirical data is there, right? So McKinsey was out in 2015. They just revised upward their estimate of how much profit you get if you have a gender equal leadership team, from 15% to 21% more profitable, right? And so I think it takes intentionality. So we have work to do on this because we have a number at our senior most rank, the direct reports to our CEO, are gender balanced 6 and 6. And then we have 46 in senior leaders and we have 30 in managers. So that's not necessarily something I would put on a billboard, but we're making progress and we see it and we understand it. But understanding a path toward 21% more profitable just by doing that, I'll take it.
Yeah, and at General Motors, I can say we believe that it is a competitive advantage, and the more diverse our workforce is, the better it will be. And we know that innovation is so important and having different ideas and different experiences. And so what we focus on is, once we get people in the company, how do we make sure they stay engaged? How do we make sure they have a voice? How do we make sure that it's just not a number, but that the environment and the culture that we have is welcoming and they feel like they belong and they have a say in how things get done? So that is something that we are very intentional about. It's not something that we count on our HR team to manage. I'm held accountable for it. I have reviews with our board and our CEO. And all of our senior leader team, we do it because it's the right thing to do, but we also know that it's a competitive advantage, and that's how we're going to get the best talent out there.
I think the other piece too is, and you said, is it going to take 50 years? It's companies that are on this list that are also driving back into the community around STEM and development and access to both education and work experience for those that may not have the advantage, because we've absolutely got to build the pipeline. And if business isn't engaged in that process, it stays fragmented.
And also, you can't fix what you can't measure. And everybody now is
Measure.
sharing their stats.
right.
It's all out there, and that is a
Enforceable
good
measure.
move. Yeah.
All right, well, Peggy, our dean, Alicia, Craig, thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here. Thank you, Just Capital. And I'm gonna let you take it away.
All right, that's it, everybody. Please stick around for half an hour, or longer. I'm not sure exactly. Michelle's going to kill me. Michelle, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Give our
Thank
best to
you.
Mark.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I will leave you with this thought. Words matter, but deeds matter more. So please, tomorrow, go out, go back to work, and make the world a more just place. See you next time. See you next year. Thank you.